King Kong is a 2005 epic monster adventure film co-written, produced, and directed by Peter Jackson. A second remake of the 1933 film of the same title. The film stars Andy Serkis, Naomi Watts, Jack Black, and Adrian Brody. Set in 1933, it follows the story of an ambitious filmmaker who coerces his cast and hired ship crew to travel to the mysterious Skull Island. There, they encounter prehistoric creatures living on the island as well as a legendary giant gorilla known as Kong, whom they capture and take to New York City. Filming for King Kong took place in New Zealand from September 2004 to March 2005. The project's budget climbed from an initial $150 million to a then record-breaking $207 million. It was released on December 14, 2005 in Germany and the United States, and made an opening of $50.1 million. While it performed lower than expected, King Kong made domestic and worldwide grosses that eventually added up to $562 million, becoming the fourth highest-grossing film in Universal Pictures history at the time and the fifth highest-grossing film of 2005. It also generated $100 million in DVD sales upon its home video release. 3. King Kong garnered largely positive reviews from critics, and appeared on several top 10 lists for 2005. The film was praised for its special effects, performances, sense of spectacle and comparison to the 1933 original, though some criticisms were focused on its 3-hour-long runtime. It won 3 Academy Awards: Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing and Best Visual Effects. A tie-in video game was released alongside the film, which also became a commercial and critical success. In 1933, during the Great Depression, New York City actress Ann Darrow is hired by financially troubled filmmaker Carl Denham to star in a film alongside actor Bruce Baxter. Ann learns her favorite playwright, Jack Driscoll, is the screenwriter. Filming takes place on the SS Venture, under Captain Engelhorn, and under Carl's pretense it will be sailing to Singapore. In truth, Carl intends to sail to and film the mysterious Skull Island. Captain Engelhorn has second thoughts about the voyage, prompted by his crew's speculation of trouble ahead. On the voyage, Anne and Jack fall in love. The Venture receives a radio message informing Engelhorn there is a warrant for Carl's arrest due to his defiance of the studio's orders to cease production. The message instructs Engelhorn to divert to Rangoon, but the ship becomes lost in fog and runs aground on Skull Island. Carl and his film crew, including cameraman Herb, assistant Preston, and boom operator Mike, explore the island and are attacked by natives who kill Mike and another member of the crew. Engelhorn intervenes and rescues the film crew. But as they make efforts to leave the waters, a native sneaks onto the ship and kidnaps Anne. The natives offer Anne as a sacrifice to King Kong, a 25-foot-tall, 7.6 meters, ape. Jack notices Anne's disappearance, and the crew returns to the island, but are too late as Kong flees with Anne into the jungle. Carl manages to catch a glimpse of Kong and becomes determined to capture him on film. Though initially terrified of her captor, Anne wins Kong over with her juggling and dancing skills and begins to grasp Kong's intelligence and capacity for emotion. Engelhorn organizes a rescue party. Led by his first mate Hayes and Jack, and accompanied by Carl, Herb, Baxter and Preston. The party gets caught between a herd of Apatosaurus-like Brontosaurus baxteri and a pack of Utahraptor-like Venatosaurus savidicus hunting them. with Herb and several others killed in the resulting stampede. After this, Baxter leaves the group to return to the ship. The remaining members of the party continue through the jungle when Kong attacks, making them fall into a ravine, resulting in Hayes' death and Carl losing his camera. Kong returns to Anne and saves her from 3 theropod dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus rex like Vistatosaurus rex, before taking her to his lair in the mountains. The remaining rescue party are attacked by giant insects in the ravine, resulting in the death of 3 more crew members. However, Preston, Carl, Jack and Hayes' apprentice Jimmy are rescued by Baxter and Engelhorn. Jack continues searching for Anne, while Carl decides to capture Kong. Jack goes to Kong's lair and accidentally awakens Kong but manages to escape with Anne. They arrive at the wall with Kong pursuing them. Kong attempts to get Anne back, killing several sailors, but is subdued when Carl knocks him out with chloroform. In New York City, Carl presents Kong, the Eighth Wonder of the World, on Broadway, starring Baxter and an imprisoned Kong. Anne, who refused to take part in the performance, is played by an anonymous chorus girl. Agitated by the chorus girl not being Anne and flashes from cameras, Kong breaks free from his chains and wrecks the theater. Out on the city's streets, Kong searches for Anne and chases Jack, before encountering Anne again. The U.S. Army soon attacks, and Kong tries getting Anne and himself to safety by climbing to the top of the Empire State Building, where he fights off 6 Navy planes. Despite managing to down 3 of them, Kong is mortally wounded from the plane's gunfire. As Jack reaches the top of the building and comforts Anne, civilians, policemen, and soldiers gather around Kong's body in the street, one bystander commenting the airplanes got him. Carl makes his way through the crowd, takes one last look at Kong and says, "It wasn't the airplanes. It was Beauty killed the Beast." Cast, edit. Andy Serkis is Kong, motion capture, a 25-foot, 7.6 meters, ape who is around 100 to 150 years old. 4.5. He is the last of his species, Megapromatus Kong. 6. Serkis also plays Lumpy, the ship's cook, barber, and surgeon. A brave sailor, he warns Denham about rumors he has heard about Skull Island and Kong. Naomi Watts is Anne Darrow, a struggling vaudeville actress who is desperate for work. Carl first meets her when she tries to steal an apple from a fruit stand. Further into the voyage, she falls in love with Jack and forms a special relationship with Kong. Jack Black is Carl Denham, a film director who obtained the map to Skull Island. Due to his debts, Carl starts to lose his moral compass and obsesses over his film to the point that he disregards safety. Adrian Brody is Jack Driscoll, a screenwriter who falls in love with Anne. He unwittingly becomes part of the voyage when, while delivering a script to Denham, he is deliberately delayed by the latter before he can get off of the venture. He is the only member of the crew who agrees with Anne that Kong should be left alone. Thomas Kretschmann is Captain Engelhorn, the German captain of the venture. Engelhorn shows a dislike for Denham, presumably because of his obsessive nature. Colin Hanks is Preston, Denham's neurotic but honest personal assistant. Jamie Bell is Jimmy, a naive teenager who was found on the venture, wild and abandoned. Evan Park is Benjamin, Ben, Hayes, Engelhorn's first mate and a mentor to Jimmy, who leads Anne's rescue mission because of his army training and combat experience gained during World War I. Lobo Chan is Choi, Lumpy's best friend and a janitor on the venture. Kyle Chandler is Bruce Baxter, an actor who specializes in adventure films. He abandons Anne's rescue mission but brings Engelhorn to rescue the search party from the insect pit, and is given credit for rescuing Anne during the Broadway display of Kong. John Sumner is Herb, Denham's loyal cameraman. Craig Hall is Mike, Denham's soundman for the journey. William Johnson is Manny, an elderly vaudevillian actor and colleague of Darrow. Mark Hadlow is Harry, a struggling vaudevillian actor. Jed Brophy and Todd Ripon appeared in the film as crew members. In addition, director Jackson appears with makeup artist Rick Baker as the pilot and gunner on the airplane that kills the title character. His children appear as New York children. The Lord of the Rings co-producer Rick Porras appears as a gunner in an airplane, and Bob Burns and his wife appear as New York bystanders. Frequent Jackson collaborator Howard Shaw makes a cameo appearance as the conductor of the New York theater from where Kong escapes. Watts, Black, and Brody were the first choices for their respective roles with no other actors considered. 7. In preparation for her role, Watts met with the original Anne Darrow. Fay Wray. 8. Jackson wanted Ray to make a cameo appearance and say the final line of dialogue, but she died during pre-production at 96 years old. 9. Black was cast as Carl Denham based on his performance in the 2000 film High Fidelity, which had impressed Jackson. 10. For inspiration, Black studied P.T. Barnum. 11. And Orson Welles. I didn't study Welles move for move. It was just to capture the spirit. Very reckless guy. I had tapes of him drunk off his ass. 12. The native extras on Skull Island were portrayed by a mix of Asian, African, Maori and Polynesian actors sprayed with dark makeup to achieve a consistent pigmentation. Development, edit, earlier attempts and 1990s, edit. Peter Jackson was 9 years old when he first saw the 1933 film, and was in tears in front of the TV when Kong slipped off the Empire State Building. At age 12, he attempted to recreate the film using his parents' Super 8mm film camera and a model of Kong made of wire and rubber with his mother's fur coat for the hair, but eventually gave up on the project. 13. King Kong eventually became his favorite film and was the primary inspiration for his decision to become a filmmaker as a teenager. 14. He read books about the making of King Kong and collected memorabilia, as well as articles from famous monsters of filmland. 15. Jackson paid tribute to the 1933 film by including Skull Island as the origin of the zombie plague in his 1992 film Braindead. During the filming of Jackson's 1996 film The Frighteners, Universal Pictures was impressed with Jackson's dailies and early visual effects footage. The studio was adamant to work with Jackson on his next project, 14, and, in late 1995, 15, offered him the chance to direct a remake of the 1954 film Creature from the Black Lagoon. He turned down the offer, but Universal became aware of Jackson's obsession with King Kong and subsequently offered him the opportunity to direct that remake. 14. The studio did not have to worry about lawsuits concerning the film rights from RKO Pictures, the studio behind the 1933 film, because the King Kong character is held in the public domain. 16. Jackson initially turned down the King Kong offer, but he quickly became disturbed by the fact that someone else would take it over. Jackson continued, and make it into a terrible film. That haunted me and I eventually said yes to Universal. At the same time, Jackson was working with Harvey Weinstein and Miramax Films to purchase the film rights of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. While 20th Century Fox was trying to hire him for the 2001 remake of Planet of the Apes. Jackson turned down Planet of the Apes, and because Weinstein was taking longer than expected to buy the Lord of the Rings rights, Jackson decided to move forward on King Kong. Weinstein was furious. And, as a result, Jackson proposed a deal between Universal and Miramax that the two studios would equally finance King Kong with Jackson's production company Wingnut Films. Universal would receive distribution rights in the United States, while Miramax would cover foreign territories. Jackson was also warranted the right of final cut privilege. A percentage of the gross profits, 15, as well as artistic control. Universal allowed all filming and visual effects to be handled entirely in New Zealand. 14. The deal was settled in April 1996. And Jackson, along with wife Fran Walsh, began working on the King Kong script. 15. In the original draft, Anne was the daughter of famed English archaeologist Lord Linwood Darrow exploring ancient ruins in Sumatra. They would come into conflict with Denham during his filming. And they would uncover a hidden Kong statue and the map of Skull Island. This would indicate that the island natives were the last remnants of a cult religion that had once thrived on Asia's mainland. Instead of a playwright, Jack was the first mate and an ex-World War I fighter pilot still struggling with the loss of his best friend, who had been killed in battle during a World War I prologue. The cameraman Herb is the only supporting character in the original draft who made it to the final version. The fight between Kong and the three V-Rex also changed from the original draft. In the draft, Anne is actually caught in the V-Rex's jaws, where she becomes wedged, and slashed by the teeth. After the fight, Kong gets her out, but she is suffering from a fever, from which she then recovers. Universal approved of the script with Robert Zemeckis as executive producer, and pre-production for King Kong commenced. The plan was to begin filming sometime in 1997 for a summer 1998 release date. Weta Digital and Weta Workshop, under the supervision of Richard Taylor and Christian Rivers, began work on early visual effects tests. 14. Specifically the complex task of building a CGI version of New York City circa 1933. Jackson and Walsh progressed with a second draft script. Sets were being designed and location scouting commenced in Sumatra and New Zealand. 15. In late 1996. Jackson flew to production of the 1997 film Titanic in Mexico to discuss the part of Anne Darrow with Kate Winslet, with whom he previously worked with on his 1994 film Heavenly Creatures. Minnie Driver was also being reportedly considered. 13. Jackson's choices for Jack Driscoll and Carl Denham included George Clooney and Robert De Niro. 9. However, development for King Kong was stalled in January 1997 when Universal became concerned over the upcoming release of the 1998 film Godzilla, as well as other ape-related remakes with the 1998 film Mighty Joe Young. 17, and the 2001 film Planet of the Apes. Universal abandoned King Kong in February 1997. 13. After Weta Workshop and Weta Digital had already designed 6 months' worth of pre-production. 9. Jackson then decided to start work on the Lord of the Rings film series. Immediately after the completion of The Return of the King, Weta Workshop and Weta Digital, supervised by Taylor, Rivers, and Joe Lettery, started pre-production on King Kong. 9. Jackson brought back most of the crew he had on the Lord of the Rings series, including cinematographer Andrew Lesnie, production designer Grant Major, art directors Simon Bright and Dan Henner, conceptual designer Alan Lee, and editor Jamie Selkirk. 14. Jackson. Walsh and Boyens began to write a new script in late October 2003. 17. Jackson acknowledged that he was highly unsatisfied with the original 1996 script. 7. That was actually just Fran and Peter very hurriedly getting something down on paper. Boyens explained, "It was more one of many possible ways the story could go." 9. The writers chose to base the new screenplay on the 1933 film rather than the 1996 script. 9. They also included scenes from James Ashmore Creelman's screenplay that were either abandoned or omitted during production of the original film. Surviving sailors pursuing Anne and himself from a log into the ravine. For example, directors Merian Cooper and Ernest B. Schertzak originally intended to depict giant spiders emerging from the rock to devour their bodies. This was cut from the original release print, and remains known to Kong fans only via a rare still that appeared in Famous Monsters of Filmland. Jackson included this scene and elaborated upon it. 9. Jackson, Walsh and Boyens also cited Delos W. Lovelace's 1932 novelization of King Kong as inspiration. 15. Which included the character Lumpy, Andy Serkis. 7. To make the relationship between Ann Darrow and Kong plausible. The writers studied hours of guerrilla footage. 22. Jackson also optioned Early Havoc, a memoir written by vaudeville performer June Havoc. 7. To help Walsh and Boyens flesh out Ann Darrow's characterization. 12. Carl Denham was intentionally modeled after and inspired by Orson Welles. 7. Their new draft was finished in February 2004. Filming, edit, principal photography started on September 6, 2004 at Camperdown Studios in Miramar, New Zealand. Camperdown housed the native village and the Great Wall, while the streets of New York City were constructed on its backlit and at Gracefield in Lower Hutt, New Zealand. The majority of the SS Venture scenes were shot aboard a full-scale deck constructed in the parking lot at Camperdown Studio and then were backed with a green screen, with the ocean digitally added in post. Scenes set in the Broadway theater from which King Kong makes his escape were filmed in Wellington's Opera House and at the Auckland Civic Theatre. 14. Filming also took place at Stone Street Studios, where a new sound stage was constructed to accommodate one of the sets. 23. Over the course of filming, the budget went from $175 million to $207 million over additional visual effects work needed, and Jackson extending the film's running time by 30 minutes. Jackson covered the $32 million surplus himself. 21. And finished filming in March 2005. The film's budget climbed from an initial $150 million to a then record-breaking $207 million and received a subsidy of $34 million from New Zealand. 24/25, making it at one point the most expensive film yet made. Universal only agreed to such an outlay after seeing a screening of the unfinished film, to which executives responded enthusiastically. Marketing and promotion costs were an estimated $60 million. The film's length also grew. Originally set to be 135 minutes, it soon grew to 200, prompting Universal executives to fly to New Zealand to view a rough cut. But they liked it, so their concerns were addressed. 26. Other difficulties included Peter Jackson's decision to change composers from Howard Shore to James Newton Howard 7 weeks before the film opened. Visual effects. Edit. Andy Serkis in his Kong bodysuit. Jackson saw King Kong as opportunity for technical innovations in motion capture. Commissioning Christian Rivers of Weta Digital to supervise all aspects of Kong's performance. 28. Jackson decided early on that he did not want Kong to behave like a human. And so he and his team studied hours of guerrilla footage. 29. Serkis was cast in the title role in April 2003, 7, and prepared himself by working with gorillas at the London Zoo. He then traveled to Rwanda, observing the actions and behaviors of gorillas in the wild. 8. Rivers explained that the detailed facial performance capture with Serkis was accomplished because of the similarities between human and gorilla faces. Gorillas have such a similar-looking set of eyes and brows. You can look at those expressions and transpose your own interpretation onto them. 28. Photos of silverback gorillas were also superimposed on Kong's image in the early stages of animation. 30. Serkis had to go through 2 hours of motion capture makeup every day, having 135 small markers attached to different spots on his face. 28. Following principal photography, Serkis had to spend an additional 2 months on a motion capture stage, miming Kong's movements for the film's digital animator. Evolution might have done to dinosaurs and the other creatures. 32. Music. Edit. King Kong, original motion picture soundtrack film score by James Newton Howard, released December 6, 2005. Recorded 2005. Genre score length 70 to 57. Label Decca James Newton Howard. Chronology Batman Begins, 2005, King Kong. Original motion picture soundtrack, 2005, Freedomland, 2006, Professional Ratings Review Scores Source Rating Soundtrack Net. King Kong. Original motion picture soundtrack was composed by James Newton Howard, who composed The Sixth Sense, Dinosaur, Atlantis, The Lost Empire and Treasure Planet. Originally, Howard Shore, who worked with Peter Jackson on The Lord of the Rings, was to compose the film's score. Shore completed and recorded several cues before he and Jackson parted ways. Shore's appearance as the conductor in the New York theater from which Kong escapes remained in the film. James Newton Howard's score was later nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Original Score. 33. The film's soundtrack includes Al Jolson's recording of I'm Sitting on Top of the World, Peggy Lee's Bye Bye Blackbird, and some themes from Max Steiner's soundtrack for the original 1933 film. Marketing. Edit. The marketing campaign started in full swing on June 27, 2005, when the teaser trailer made its debut, first online at the official Volkswagen website at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, then 8:55 p.m. EDT across media outlets owned by NBC Universal, the parent of Universal Studios, including NBC, Bravo, CNBC, and MSNBC. That trailer appeared in theaters attached to War of the Worlds, which opened on June 29. Jackson also regularly published a series of production diaries, which chronicled the film's production. The diaries started shortly after the DVD release of The Return of the King as a way to give Jackson's The Lord of the Rings fans a glimpse of his next project. These diaries are edited into broadband-friendly installments of 3 or 4 minutes each. They consist of features that would normally be seen in a making-of documentary, a tour of the set, a roving camera introducing key players behind the scene, a peek inside the sound booth during last-minute dubbing, or Andy Serkis doing his ape movements in a motion capture studio. 34. A novelization of the film and a prequel novel entitled King Kong, The Island of the Skull were also written. A multi-platform video game, entitled Peter Jackson's King Kong, was released, which featured an alternate ending. There was also a hardback book entitled The World of Kong, A Natural History of Skull Island, featuring artwork from Weta Workshop to describe the film's fictional wildlife. Jackson has expressed his desire to remaster the film in 3D at some point in the future. 35. Jackson was also seen shooting with a 3D camera at times during the shoot of King Kong. Box office. Edit. The billboard at the Odeon Leicester Square premiere in North America. King Kong grossed $9,755,745 during its Wednesday opening and $50,130,145 over its first weekend for a 5-day total of $66,181,645 from around 7,500 screens at 3,568 theaters. 37. Some analysts considered these initial numbers disappointing, saying that studio executives had been expecting more. 38. 39. The film went on to gross $218,080,025 in the North American market and ended up in the top 5 highest-grossing films of the year. 40. The film grossed an additional $344,283,424 at the box office in other regions for a worldwide total of $562,363,449, which not only ranked it in the top 5 highest-grossing films of 2005 worldwide. 41. But also helped the film bring back more than 2.5 times its production budget. During its home video release, King Kong sold over $100 million worth of DVDs in the largest 6-day performance in Universal Studios history. 42. King Kong sold more than 7.6 million DVDs, accumulating nearly $194 million worth of sales numbers in the North American market alone. 43. As of June 25, 2006, King Kong has generated almost $38 million from DVD rental gross. 44. In February 2006, TNT Cinematic and Literary Allusions. Edit. Jack Black and critics have noted Carl Denham's similarity to Orson Welles. 58. When Driscoll is searching for a place to sleep in the animal storage hold, a box behind him reads Sumatran rat monkey, beware the bite. This is a reference to the creature that causes mayhem in Jackson's 1992 film Braindead. 59. In that film, the rat monkey is described as being found only on Skull Island. Jimmy reads part of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness while en route to Skull Island, at one point comparing their journey to that of the novella. 60. References to original 1933 King Kong. Edit. Fay Wray, the original Ann Darrow, was asked by Jackson to appear in a brief cameo role in which she would utter the film's final line, "It was beauty killed the beast." At first, she flatly refused, but then seemed to consider the possibility. However, she died shortly after her meeting with Jackson. 58. As in the original film, The line ultimately went to the character of Carl Denham. An ad for Universal is visible while Kong is tearing up Times Square. In the 1933 film, an ad for Columbia Pictures appeared in the same spot. And the production designers replicated it, but Columbia asked for a large amount of money for its use. So effects artists replaced it. 59. When Denham is considering who to play the part before meeting Anne, he suggests Faye, but his assistant Preston replies, "She's doing a picture with RKO." Music from the 1933 film is heard, and Denham mutters, "Cooper, huh? I might have known." Fay Wray starred in the 1933 film, which was directed by Marion C. Cooper and released by RKO. 59. At the time she was performing in another Cooper. In the 1933 film, Cooper made up an Arabian proverb about Beauty and Beast. The 2005 remake repeats the fake proverb. 59. Early in this film, Denham shoots a scene for his film in which Anne, in character, proclaims she's never been on a ship before, and Bruce Baxter improvises lines proclaiming annoyance. The dialogue they exchange is taken verbatim from early scenes between Anne and Jack Driscoll in the 1933 film. Ironically, in this film, Jack Driscoll expresses disapproval of such words toward Anne. 59. Kong's New York stage appearance looks very much like a reenactment of the 1933 film's sacrifice scene, including the posts the beauty is tied to and the nearly identical performance, costumes, and blackface makeup of the dancers. In addition, the music played by the orchestra during that scene is Max Steiner's original score for the 1933 film. 59. The battle between Kong and the final V. Rex is almost move for move like the last half of the fight between Kong and the T-Rex in the 1933 film, right down to Kong playing with the dinosaur's broken jaw and then standing, beating his chest and roaring victoriously. 59. After the crew captures Kong on the beach, Denham speaks a line from the 1933 film, "The whole world will pay to see this. We're millionaires, boys. I'll share it with all of you. In a few months, his name will be up in lights on Broadway." Kong, the eighth wonder of the world. 59. Home. Home Media, edit. King Kong was released on DVD on March 28, 2006 in the United States and Canada. The three versions that came out are a single-disc full screen, a single-disc widescreen, and a two-disc, widescreen special edition. A three-disc deluxe extended edition was released on November 14, 2006 in the US, 61, and on November 3 in Australia, 62. 12 minutes were reinserted into the film, and an additional 40 minutes included with the rest of the special features. The film was spread onto the first two discs with commentary by Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens, and some featurettes on discs 1 and 2, whilst the main special features are on disc 3. Another set was released, including a Weta figurine of a bullet-ridden Kong scaling the Empire State Building, roaring at the Navy with Anne in hand. The extended film amounts to 200 total minutes. A special HD DVD version of King Kong was part of a promotional pack for the release of the external HD DVD drive for the Xbox 360. The pack contained the HD DVD drive, the Universal Media Remote and King Kong on HD DVD. 64. It was also available separately as a standard HD DVD. 65. The film's theatrical and extended cuts were released together on Blu-ray disc on January 20, 2009. 66. a re-release of the Blu-ray with a new bonus disc containing nearly all of the extras from the 2-disc Special Edition DVD, the Deluxe Extended Edition 3-disc DVD, and the Peter Jackson's Production Diaries 2-disc DVD titled The Ultimate Edition, was released on February 7, 2017. 67, an Ultra HD Blu-ray followed in July 2017. In March 2021, Adam Wingard revealed in an interview that Peter Jackson was interested in producing a sequel to the film, titled Skull Island, with Wingard as director and Simon Barrett writing it. 68, he stated, "We have to travel back in time to 2013 or so when Your Next was about to come out in theaters. Somehow, Peter Jackson had seen an early version of Your Next, and he was interested in me directing a sequel to his King Kong film. It was just going to be called Skull Island. But this movie was set up at Universal, and the King Kong rights somehow ended up at Warner Brothers. That movie went to the wayside. And so did I." 68. Wingard says that Jackson was thinking of set the proposed movie during World War I, which would make it a prequel. But, the feeling I got was that the studio wasn't really that interested in doing a World War I film. So naturally we were like, well, we don't want to do a King Kong World War I movie. We would rather do it modern day. 69. Wingard talked with Mary Parent about his pitch for the movie, but he claimed to can only summon up some details. It was modern day. There was some sort of opening scene where characters were in a museum and they're talking. Then at the end of the scene, it's revealed that the museum has these giant King Kong bones. He's like this relic from the past and Skull Island is this sort of myth and nobody knows what happened to it. And somehow these characters are going back there. I remember there was this whole element of the island being cloaked somehow by some sort of technology. Those are the main things that I can remember. I don't remember what the plot was going to be about." 69. Ultimately, a sequel was never made after being reworked into Kong, Skull Island, 2017, set in the Monsterverse, along with the distribution rights transferring to Warner Brothers. Wingard later directed the 2021 film Godzilla vs. Kong, also set in the Monsterverse. 68, Monsterverse. A reboot, titled Kong, Skull Island, was released on March 10, 2017 as the second film in the Monsterverse. It was both a critical and commercial success, grossing $566 million worldwide. 71. A sequel, titled Godzilla vs. Kong, was released in theaters and on the streaming service HBO Max on March 31, 2021. Theme Park. Edit. Main article. Skull Island. Reign of Kong. The Universal Orlando Resort Location Islands of Adventure features an attraction called Skull Island, Reign of Kong, which is based on Peter Jackson's remake. While the King Kong part of the Universal Studios Hollywood Resort was destroyed by massive fire, a 3D short inspired by the film was eventually created in 2010. This was King Kong 363D, which is another attraction based on Peter Jackson's remake.